Hello, and welcome to tonight's webinar brought to you by the Family Resource Center. Before we get started, I want to tell you a little bit about the Clovis Family Resource Center. So we are housed with our district's early intervention program called City Kids. So we're serving families with children ages birth to 3 in early intervention. We also support families ages 3 to 22 throughout the district as well. So some of the things we do are providing parent workshops like this and webinars. We serve as a liaison helping families navigate through early intervention, special education, and getting connected with both district and community agencies that can provide resources. We help families understand their parent rights and again, navigate IFSPs and IEPs. So a little bit of housekeeping. If you have questions, please use the question and answer feature at any time. At the bottom of the bar, you'll see the Q&A symbol. It's a cleaner way of helping us keep track of the questions that are asked, and we make sure they get answered. There will be handouts tonight. I'll be posting the link to that in the chat in just a few moments. Also, at the end of this evening, you will see the link for a brief survey. That information you provide in that survey, your feedback is so valuable to us. So please take just a moment to do that. And also, the link to the certificate will be posted in the chat box as well. It is one link to a Google Drive. It will have your certificate and the handouts all in one place. Also, if you miss any of that as we go along, it is okay. Tomorrow morning, you are going to receive an email from me that will include all of this relevant information as well. So this is just a quick disclaimer that this is for educational purposes. This isn't legal or medical advice. So with that, I'm going to let our presenters introduce themselves and we will get started. Thank you.
He was essentially really 5 years old until he got like some sort of language communication. It was 7 before I would say that he really was communicating and getting his needs met verbally, but anyways, he was just attached with me from a young age. He did stuff with me and my friends in high school, but I say this, he not only has touched my life and my parents and but also my children, because my children grew up so close to him and involved that those are the pictures. I guess they're going to be on your right of the screen. The top right is him with my son. He loves cars, everything to do with vehicles. We call him our fleet manager. When he lived with me for 10 years for the last 10 years before I moved here to pursue school. This is my selfish time, I call it. As a sibling, that's not always easy, but anyways, my son is letting him put air in his tire. And then the one below it is my daughter's graduation from college. And what is so special about this picture is my brother, who does this awkward, like sideways hug, kind of like I'm touching you and hugging you because I have to. When I told him to take a picture with his niece, he reached over and grabbed her and put his arm around her. First time I'd ever seen that from him, and he was probably 35. So I love that. And then the pictures below with the 2 different boys are my cousin's kids, who I'm really close with, and he's impacted their lives, so he's just impacted so many people outside of just me. So And then I'll stop talking about myself and let Liza talk about herself some.
Okay. So this is my story. So who are the people in these pictures? This here is on the bottom left is my brother, Matthew. He is 10 years younger than me. He's 32. He either identifies as autistic or on the autism spectrum. He's flexible with his identification on that. This next to, where does my mouse keeps disappearing? This is our sister, Rhiannon. Rhiannon and I live together. We're a year and a half apart, and we make jokes about us being like the twins from The Simpsons, you know, that we're always gonna be living together. And then up above here, this is our mom. Our mom died several years ago. And to the right here is my brother with my sister Rhiannon, and this is Ralph, our stepdad, or Matthew's biological dad. And he died recently. And so to the right of that is Matthew with our sister Angela, and she died a couple of years ago. Our family has gone through a lot of transition, and you know, at one point I knew that I was going to be one of my brother's caregivers. I don't think we realized it was going to happen this early in our lives, but here we are. You know, you just roll with it as it comes. And with this transition, my brother had to leave the house that he was living in. So for the first time in his life, he's living alone in an apartment independently. And that's both exciting and a little scary. You know, a friend of mine said, happiness tempered with fear. And I think that's a pretty good description, because I'm so proud of him for taking on all of these challenges that he has now as an independent person. And my sister Rhiannon and I want to do everything that we can to help him get the quality of life that he wants for himself. But then there's also like, what are all the things that we need to do? What are all the resources that we need? How do we make this happen for him? So there's a lot going on, and he really likes the different like Pixar stories. And so we've been using some of those to kind of go through these transitions together. So we recently, you know, we had watched the movie Up, and they say adventure is out there. And so that's one thing that we kind of talk about is these things might be scary and new, but there's a lot that we can learn from them. And sometimes you might find changes exactly what you need to grow. And then he's been watching Luca a lot. And so the story of the underdogs and exploring the unknown and being in unfamiliar territory, and that sometimes you might feel like the odds are stacked against you, but you can still, you know, come out on top through that. So that's kind of our story. We're taking on these challenges together. And yeah, thank you for being here with us tonight.
Liza, do you want to share what you do professionally?
I am a content specialist. I work for Fresno County Superintendent of Schools in the special education department. Big surprise. A lot of us are in the field. And so a lot of the work that I'm doing right now actually is in working with like transition age youth. And so that's exciting for me, because I'm learning a lot about what I need to do to support my brother and trying to tie that into the work that I'm doing with the students that I'm serving too. So, yeah.
I purposely made her clarify because there a lot of siblings are in the special education field or in the service helping fields, and we'll get into that a little further as we go into the evening. So
yeah, I think like more than half of our board is in a service field, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm also on the board for the National Sibling Leadership Network. So California is a chapter kind of underneath the national organization, which absolutely are out there in Washington, DC and advocating and doing stuff. We're right alongside parents advocating for our siblings. So good. So we know who's here. We did the poll a little early, so welcome everybody. And you know, we appreciate everyone's interest. like I shared earlier, siblings, we'd love to connect with you. And we'll talk at the end, the last couple slides, about how if you want to get involved, you know, we have monthly meetings and so forth. But welcome and thank you to the parents, especially for expressing an interest in understanding your we'll just say neurotypical child as well, and what they may be going through as a Sib. So, and supporters.
We have a staff service analyst from the Department of Rehab and a psychologist that is also a parent. Those are the two professionals in the room.
Great. All right. Thank you guys. Yeah. And professionals, you know, I always tell people, don't forget about the siblings, you know, so we especially appreciate it when you guys are out there, you know, the people in the trenches to bring up this topic. It's important. So, and we'll talk about why it's important as we go through this. So, all right, up next. So we want to give a little, this is a little bit of a different format, but if you want in the chat, kind of share, you know, anybody, especially siblings, you know, what's your story? How do you relate with your sibling maybe? Or parents, we're going to give you guys a time to speak also as we get into, you know, I call it the meat of the evening when we talk about, you know, how having a sibling could impacts us. I'm just checking in the chat here, and it looks like a bunch of stuff about handouts. So given that we're not able to have you guys speak to us, then we'll go ahead and maybe move on. Liza?
Yeah. So why think about Sibs? Like, why are we here tonight? So it's estimated that about 4.5 million siblings of individuals with special needs in the United States are out there. So that's a large number of people that are in our position that you might want to connect with. You know, we call ourselves the club sandwich generation because for many people, you might be helping at some point in your life as a care provider for, you know, your parents, and you might have your kids if you choose to have kids. But for us, we have that extra slice of bread in there in that sandwich where we might also be caring for our siblings throughout our lives. And we might be doing all three of those things at the same time, depending on the age of our parents and us when we're in this position. So if you want to assure the long-term positive outcome for a family member with a disability, invest in their brothers and sisters. And so thank you also to the professionals that are in this room, because like Nikki said, like we're a group that is often overlooked, and yet we're going to be probably providing a lot of the care and support throughout the lives of our siblings. And so making sure that we're in the room having those conversations is really important. And it makes a huge difference in how those dynamics play out throughout our lives. Okay, so some of the key themes we're going to talk about this evening, and we'll go into greater detail, are these three. And so that Sibs experiences very often parallel parents. We are often caretakers when we're younger. There's a different maturity level that we sometimes have as we are supporting our parents in supporting our sibling. But a lot of times those resources aren't available to us. So when a parent gets a new diagnosis, you know, the Family Resource Center might be out there and the school psychologist might connect with them, but people aren't saying, hey, sibling, how can I support you and make sure that you have what you need through this? Do you have any questions? Is there anything that you're struggling with as you're going through this? So the services are available for parents, but they're not always there for the siblings. The lifespan issue. So we're kind of going alongside with our sibling throughout our lives, and there's a lot of different situations that are going to take place, different dynamics that are going to take place as we age and mature alongside each other. And we have, like this says, the Sibs spend most of the time with their brother and sister. So we spend a large percentage of our lives, often more than parents, family, other friends, things like that with our siblings. And so we have the ability to make a great impact on our siblings too, and them back on us as well. So yeah, and then most siblings, like Nikki had said, will say that their sibling experience has played a major role in their life decisions and their worldview and how they approach things, and often in their career and what they do. So
I'll add on the lifespan issues, and we have a great slide. Well, I think it's great, at least toward the end, because siblings' needs change across that lifespan. So we break it. We didn't break it down. Some brilliant researcher broke it down many years ago, and we put it into the slide for you guys. But it's broken down by age, population. Like as a preschooler, what might they be feeling and what they need. So just a little preview. So I can go ahead and introduce the film since I'm talking, if you want, Liza.
sure.
So this is a video. I'll just say it is a little old. We're just gonna watch the first 3 minutes of it here, and it just you'll get to hear a couple siblings talking on here, and then kind of what the research says about it. And you're going to hear us say that because I like to refer to it as a research. This is not just stuff that we've came up with on our own. This is a very highly studied topic to understand siblings. So I love this quote here. You'll hear her, Ann Kaiser, in the movie actually says, and funny thing, this is really old, and I'm actually working with her now on research projects here. So, but we share more genetically, environmentally with our siblings than anyone else. It is as close as you can get. I love it. But with that, let's watch the first 3 minutes and 10 seconds, I believe it is, Liza, of this movie.
Can you see the screen? Yes.
We can see it. It's not playing for me.
Yeah, I'm going to play it right now.
Okay.
And the sound should be shared, so let me know if you can't hear it.
Okay. I don't think there's sound right at the very beginning, so.
No. And we did test all this before everybody came on, so of course it probably won't work now.
Is it playing for you?
It's spinning. Fun.
I have it downloaded if we need.
That's so funny. We had tested it and everything.
That's technical difficulty number 5, if anybody is counting. There will be a prize for the accurate tally at the end of the evening. Well,
I'm trying it again. Hold on.
Okay. Yeah, no worries.
It looks like it's advancing.
It's not awkward at all.
We got past 9 seconds, and here we go. Can you hear it?
All right. Yes.
Can't see it though.
You can't see
Siblings are like the bane of your existence.
Okay, hold on.
We see the screen, but it's not progressing. Yeah.
There we go.
Can you see it now?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And they're everything for why you want to exist. If you want to know about a person with a developmental disability, if you want to know the impact that the disability has on that individual, as well as the family, it's going to be the brother or the sister who's really going to have the insight. They're going to have that connection that no one else is going to have.
Sibling relationships and individual kids seen through the eyes of their parents look one way, seen through each other's eyes, they look differently. And you know, we share more genetically and environmentally with our Sibs than we do with anybody else. It's as close as you get.
Hi, my name is Abby, and this is my brother Matthew. He has autism. I can talk. Most people don't really understand about autism, and they would just be clueless. If somebody starts laughing at him, which they often do, usually I'll just really want to protect him, so I'll usually end up crying. Matthew may be a little annoying, but of course all little brothers are. But I love him. I like that he's a challenge for me. Like when I'm trying to talk to him, it's a real challenge to try and actually get him in the room, get him paying attention, and getting him actually responding. He really makes me laugh when he tries dancing. It's so funny. I actually see Matthew working at Disney World because he knows all the attractions and everything. When he grows up, I think that Matthew will, if he needs it, I will take care of him. But I don't think he will. I just really, really love him.
Brothers and sisters of children with disabilities, even when they're young, are thinking about big issues. And the big issues are personal. They have to do with how I'm going to live my life, how I'm going to take care of my brother and sister when my parents can't do that. There's a maturity level there that I think is, at least on average, that's there that I don't know if other children have in a way.
The challenges presented by a sibling with those kinds of difficulties accelerates development. You have an opportunity to mature in ways much more quickly than your peer group is going to. And I think what we're trying to discover is that it still is a tightrope. So it gives some kids that opportunity to mature more quickly, and others, it just seems like the weight of it seems to create a burden for them as well.
Right. The whole movie, when you guys, the link is there. I would recommend the whole thing. We're not going to do a whole 13 minutes here, but it's free to access online.
And Nikki, I did say I will share out the link to the video in the morning, okay, in that email. So
great. Thank you, Leann. We're starting to see some movies in the mainstream now that deal with sibling issues. Wonder is one of my favorite, and an interesting story. I went to it with my mom, and my brother and I went and saw it, and my mom actually reached over and held my hand, like the way it hit her watching that movie, because if you guys have seen it, it goes through like his experiences, like through his eyes and through his mom's eyes, through his dad's eyes, and also through the siblings' eyes, which I didn't realize and I hadn't expected. And my mom and I were both in tears together after the movie, and it was so powerful. And it was wow, you understand me. I really felt in that moment like my mom understood what I went through. So
that's been one of the neat things about the group that we're a part of, is how many times we say, wow, somebody understands me, like in our adult lives, like it's clicking for us.
Yeah. And one of our things with doing these is we feel like getting that the message out there of our unique needs and what we may be feeling as siblings, so that maybe future siblings don't have to wait till they're 30, 40 years old until they have that moment with their parent, like, oh, you understand me, kind of thing. So we might have to change this up as we go a little bit, Liza,
Yeah.
with not being able to have participants talk back with us, but here we were just kind of putting this together, like what did those conversations look like in your families? And Liza and I, just preparing this presentation, really had kind of unique experiences, right? From what did those conversations about our siblings with disability as look like in our family, right?
Yeah. And so like the little girl in this video, she's talking about, my brother's going to work at Disney World, and if he needs somebody to take care of him, I will. And, you know, they mentioned that a lot of kids are aware of that. I don't think I was a caretaker when I wanted to go to IEPs. I went to trainings all the time to learn about autism. I don't think it hit me completely until I was more in my college age level. And then, so I like this picture because somebody is talking and somebody is thinking. And that really is, you know, what kind of family do you have? You know, like, it wasn't until my mom was in the hospital and would be leaving us soon that we're having this conversation. And my stepdad is like, will you be, if something happens to me, because he had leukemia, he ended up with leukemia too. If something happens to me, like, will you be able to take this on? You know? And here we were, you know, grown up, and so some of these conversations happen. Sometimes it's, you know, a role that someone in the family, like you might know that this person, we're kind of grooming them to help be a care provider, you know, and it's going to look very different in each family. And how do we navigate those conversations? Because sometimes we don't want to wait until you're in crisis situation to kind of be figuring out what support is going to look like along the way. Did you want to share something with that?
Yeah. Yeah, I was just going to say, you know, that's where we get a lot of people, Sibs, that come to us and they find our group because they are in that crisis, you know, because conversations haven't started. And I'll say, you know, as a parent, if you don't feel like there is somebody that would take that role, if, you know, I don't know everybody's family dynamics and so forth, but I will say, if you can if something, you know, eventually, you know, you hope, we presume that your child will outlive you. That may not always be the case, but should something unexpectedly happen to you, that the critical information is written down somewhere and somebody knows where it's at. You know, our group is working on creating a kit, I guess. We through the school here, we're not really, probably shouldn't say the true name. It's the Oh Shoot kit, right? the survival packet for siblings. It's the what do, it's like a book to write down all the critical information and how do you connect to services, what are rights, and anyway, so if your family is in that position where you're not to that conversation yet, the least that you could do right now is just writing it down. But
Nikki, that's such a good point. You know, a couple weeks ago, earlier this month, I hosted a training with one of our district police officers on, you know, having positive relationships. And we got onto the topic of safety. And that was one of the things that that I highly recommend to families, is to put that critical information, even if your child is young, right? That could be a different reason, but you're doing it so that if you do by any chance get to go out for an evening right? Wow, wouldn't that be amazing? But you know, if grandma and grandpa or the babysitter, somebody is watching your child with special needs, all that critical information is at their fingertips, right? It's just good safety 101 to have all that information in one place.
Yeah.
And so, and then like you said, as they get older, boy, that is invaluable information to have. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, I know even when my brother moved in with me, you know, I'd been so close, like I thought, like, I got this, you know, I was attending his IEPs when I was in, he was probably, I started, I think when he was in high school or the adult transition program for sure. But I was like, holy cow, first time I took him to the doctor, like, wait, what's his social security number? What's his health history? And so luckily my mom was still there. I could just pick up the phone and call her and ask her. And then I started documenting them, because one thing that has occurred to me, because my brother is 10 years younger than me, that he will likely outlive me. So now I'm almost in this role as a parent also, where I want to prepare. My daughter has absolutely insisted that her uncle will live with her. She wants him now, but I want to make sure that everything is in place for her when she takes over. So
sure.
Gosh.
And did you see, Nikki
Yep.
and Liza, did you see there's a question? Someone asked that. What age?
Yeah, I was just gonna to speak to that. And you know, it depends on the child. You know, some children would never show interest in going to an IEP. You know, I think you could just ask them. I think if they're too, you as the parent can gauge, and Liza, jump in here, you know, if it might be hard for them to hear, you know, as parents, there's stuff at an IEP that's hard to hear, you know. I probably wouldn't recommend for younger children, and I'm talking like under the age of 12, you know, like 8 to 12-year-old kind of thing, but maybe not like one of their triennial IEPs where it's all the reports and so forth. And as a parent, that's hard to take in if there's deficits there that are being talked about, you know, but it's hard to say.
And I also wanted to say, not to assume that the sibling needs to be the care provider, right? It's just because, you know, that's another dynamic that can sometimes happen in the family, as somebody grows up and it's like, I want my own life separate, you know, so we have to be, we also don't want to put that on certain family members. Like, so I mean, it's going to vary depending on your family. I think it's just about, you know, we have a slide later on where we'll talk about some of the different ages and things that might come up, which might answer your question a little bit more as to how to talk about it at what age and what that looks like. But yeah, that social security thing, Nikki, my brother didn't know his social security and nobody else had it. And it was how to track this thing down, because in order to access anything, I need that.
Yeah.
So
I see in the chat here, the sibling is 13. I would say, you know, they don't assume that they want to, kind of what Liza was alluding to. You know, you can, I think it is perfectly acceptable to say, hey, do you want to go to the IEP for a 13-year-old? You know, do you want to go? Do you want to understand what these meetings are that I always go to for your brother? You know, that's one of the things we'll talk about when we get further on, is including and having those conversations and communication, and how you include a child will look very different throughout their lifespan.
yeah, and it's also important to see the SIB as their own person outside of the identity of a sibling of somebody with a disability. So to recognize that they are their own person too, and they're not always tied to who their sibling is.
Yep.
Real quick, I know that she also, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name right, but Diane, you know, I know you were looking for suggestions on how to help your 13-year-old connect, you know, with his younger sibling. You know, I would really recommend too getting connected to maybe you know, a mom's support group that have, you know, children with autism. And because I'm telling you, there are that support system that you will get brainstorming with other moms. I'm quite certain there is nothing that someone else hasn't gone through, right? And other moms or other parents are a great source of ideas and suggestions on something like that. And if you need ideas on how to do that, just email me at the Family Resource Center, and I have list of different groups that I know of in town. Okay.
Good, thanks. Can you list the support groups for children? Maybe that's something you can share out, Leann.
Yes, absolutely. If you want to email me at the Family Resource Center, like I said, I'd be happy to include a list of ones that I'm aware of in town. Okay.
Good. All right.
Okay, let's see here.
Shall we move on?
Yeah, so basically, the majority of the information that comes out is that overall most siblings report positive effects from the relationship with their siblings, both their mind, their heart, their body. Good results come from that. And the intensity, different factors in their life will affect the intensity of those effects. Each person is unique in their experience. So this is just generally across the research that's there, but we see trends of increase in empathy, social awareness, self-awareness, and awareness of others, increased confidence and closeness with their siblings. A lot of people report that they have a good relationship with their sibling. So as parents or guardians or professionals that are in the room, I think it's just about being attentive, looking at the different dynamics and how interactions are going, to recognize some of the concerns and opportunities that Nikki is going to talk about in a little bit, and then to be proactive, which it sounds like you all are, because you're here wanting to have a conversation and wanting to learn about this. So thank you for being in the room with us tonight. Nikki, you want to talk about the concerns?
Yep, I'm answering a question in the Q&A. So Liza, if you have anything to comment on that one, feel free while we're going through. I'm going to close the chat, so if you want to watch that, Liza. So, concerns. We look at concerns. That's probably what brings most parents here, right? Where you might have a concern about what your child needs. So these are, I'm just going to preface this with, not every child is going to feel all of these that I talk about on these 2 slides. And then just so you know, after that, we also have the positive effects, because there are a ton of positive effects that can come out of being a Sib also. So, but just know that these are some things that the typical sibling may be feeling, and it may come and go throughout their lifespan. We talk about the lifespan issue, but just we share them all so that you can be aware and that what they may be going through. So you might be able to look for the signs that they're experiencing any of these, and then we'll give the slide at the end also says what you can do to help support what they might be feeling at different ages. So just Sibs can experience resentment, you know, if you're spending a lot of time with the other child, you know, they don't they may not get the attention that they want. It may be a one-way relationship with the parent where they're just being asked to help a lot. Again, parents may be unavailable to meet their needs. So increased responsibilities. The parentification is one thing that you could see it with the two typical siblings also, right? If one child sees their role more as a parent with the sibling, they also may feel the need to protect their sibling. I can share for myself, that's exactly what I felt with my brother. Just we were having some turmoil in my household when my brother was young, and that was my instinct to just protect my brother, you know. And I'm happy to say everything's great, and it's all good now, but peer issues, embarrassment, you know, we as adults, you know, as a parent, you can feel embarrassed sometimes if your child is down throwing a tantrum in the middle of the grocery store or something, and you feel like you're being judged. But so other Sibs can feel that as well. So this is where, you know, we talk about the conversations come in. I remember it. I don't know that I remember the embarrassment specifically. Well, maybe some, but I can't tell you how many times, like, my mom parked the grocery cart with the cashier and said, "I'll be back," and took me and my brother home, and I had to stay home with my brother when my mom went and finished grocery shopping, you know. So but anyways, young children have youth, I guess. There's such a desire to conform. You don't want to be different. So just having, if that's one thing to consider, if, you know, your children are at the same school together, those would be great conversations to have, you know, if their peer group knows that that's their sibling, and if there's something that is perceived as different, that young children have that desire to conform. So there may be that may be an issue. Communication, you know, making sure age appropriate information is given to the typical Sib, and you know, that's what I said in the chat there. Just talking to your child about, you know, what you don't even necessarily need to say, like, your brother or sister has a disability, this is what a disability is. You could, that may be how your family approaches it. It depends on the age level. But it's just like, oh, your brother needs to do this, or this is how you need to talk to your brother. Just, if you just put it as like, everybody has different needs and everybody needs something different, maybe not making a big deal out of it for young kids, but you know, those conversations evolve. So age appropriate information. So some Sibs can experience guilt. One of the leaders in this field, Don Meyer, it talks about he had a sibling, I think that was that, I forget, it was something with the brain. I can't remember what it was, but he always thought that oh, like, I picked on him or I did something, so now I gave this to him. I would say this probably happens more in the I would say if the sib is younger, or the sibling with special needs is younger, right? You know, you think of the, like, oh, that one time that I pushed him down or something, did I cause this to happen? So there may be some guilt if the child with a disability is an older sibling, when the younger sibling passes them developmentally. That can be one. And with adult siblings, you know, there could be guilt around, you know, not your parents not preparing for the future, not having those conversations, you know, just making sure that their needs are met. So isolation, right? Parents, that's probably not a shocker to you. You know, the challenge to go in public. I've talked to some Sibs that they didn't want to invite their friends over to their house because of their sibling. And then just the not being able to participate in typical events. And I say, I did not realize this until I was way in adulthood, actually, I think, until I connected with the California Sibs. But I was highly involved in extracurricular activities, campfire and soccer and softball. And I played softball, I don't know, up till I was probably 12, I'm thinking. But I never put it together that after my brother hit about the age 2, that all of that stopped. And I never remember consciously thinking like, oh, I can't do this anymore because it is such a challenge to even take my brother out of the house. Right. So, but now reflecting, I see that all stopped. I don't blame my mom. My mom has shared that she has a lot of guilt about how I was raised, and you know what happened because of you know having my brother. I assure her it's fine, but it took me in adulthood looking back and going, oh, that all makes sense now. So but I didn't consciously think about it at that time, which tells me as an adult, like my mom never just like got angry or something and said, do you understand we can't do this because of your brother? You know, there was never an anything because of your brother conversation in our household, which I think helped with me accepting my circumstances, because there wasn't ever any blame for it or anything. It was always just like, this is how we do it as a family. I didn't know any different, not at all. So good, we can go on to the next one. And if you guys want to be thinking, we're going to go through after this slide. Our next one is, you know, share out like, what are your concerns? Also, so if you want to be thinking of those about what you might want to be willing to share, we'd love to hear that when we get through with this. So, so fear is something else that can be fueled by lack of information. But I would also say that it might be by too much information as well at a not the right age. But so, and some sibs have the fear of, can I catch it? You know, I will tell you, I still, not that I can catch it, but I'm like, oh, is this like an autism thing that I'm doing here? You know, and my mom just told me the other day when I told her about how I've automated a ton of things in my house, like turning lights on and bedtime routines and so forth, that she's like, oh, autism much there, Nikki? I'm like, no, I just don't like to think about things all the time. But anyway, so there can be that fear from younger siblings that just don't necessarily understand. Again, it's lack of information that what their sibling has is not contagious, right? So I would say, especially if there is a sibling with a more of a degenerative type of condition, you know, they may see like, oh, as he's getting older, this is happening. Is that going to happen to me too? Is another thing. So just reassuring and you know, age appropriate information and communication is there, can help with that. So future concerns, you know, the future care, as I think Liza and I have talked about that a bit already, just as adult siblings, we're right there in the middle of that, you know, and that's one of our biggest things is realizing when that's gonna come to us. How will we handle that? So,
And the fear that we're, like you mentioned earlier, we're older, there's a good chance we're going to pass beforehand. So how to make sure that our sibling has community and connection and, you know, isn't alone when something happens to us.
Yep. And then will my child have the same? I don't, when, you know, I have two 25 and 23-year-old. So I have two grown children now. I don't ever remember thinking that, but I didn't know much about autism at the time. I don't think I ever really, it wasn't a concern when I was pregnant. I have a concern. I've had many conversations with my daughter about, you know, there are some things that I don't want to say are established as causing, but there are certain things that research have tied to a higher prevalence of autism in families. So yeah, I go down the list with her, like, make sure you're taking these vitamins and don't live next to a freeway. And I go through that with her if she wants to feel that possibly she's reduced her risk there. So the lost, you know, several siblings that are in our group, their sibling has passed, but they still identify as a sib. So, you know, your sib may be experiencing the loss if it's a significant more significant disability or a degenerative disability. And then there's also fantasizing over having a typical sibling relationship. This one I highly relate with, you know, having an older sister, and you know, my brother's my only brother. So I mourn that relationship frequently. You know, I wish that I had that brother to call. You know, when he lived with me, you know, I'm single, and when he lived with me, I wish that I could just call you up and like, hey, you know, brother, come help me with this. You know, now he's strong, but he's not very coordinated. So there's certain things, just basic lifting or something, but if I'm like need to move a couch from one room to another, he is not gonna does not have the spatial awareness to help navigate a corner or something. He can lift the couch, he can move it from one side of the room to the other, but so I do mourn just being able to have a typical brother-sister relationship, you know, and so forth. So and safety, you know, if there's aggression in the home, that can be one thing. My home was on lockdown when my brother was little, just because he would escape from the house because he loved trains, and there was a spur train track down at the end of our block. But you know, there are my brother was aggressive, but he was so much younger than me. He was so much smaller than me when he was in that severely aggressive stage. I never personally felt like fear for my safety, but I've heard from other Sibs in our larger network that did grow up that way.
Well, even like now as an adult, I have the safety concerns about, so my brother just started using the oven on his own for the first time the other day, without letting me know first. We had been doing it together. And so anyways, that happened. But then just relationships and online presence and all other things that teens and young adults, you know, are going to experience, and the concerns you have to make sure that they're okay.
Yeah. There's that fine line with letting them experience what typical people their age or developmental age experience, and keeping them safe, right? So there's a fine line there. Liza, I have to pull up my brother's Facebook every time I go visit him now, because he's currently in Alabama with my parents while I'm doing this program. But I pull up his Facebook whenever I'm there and check his friends list, because there's been like girls in bikinis on his Facebook friends list, and I'm like, no way, dude. So but yeah, it is a fear.
That's hard too, right? The autonomy, like
I
as
know.
you are a
Yep.
grown up and you are entitled to your own freedom and space, you know, but I also want you to be safe and
Right.
line.
Right, because there's women that would take advantage of him. You know, he has a debit card. I'm his designated payee for his Social Security, so there's only a limited amount of money on the debit card that he keeps on his person, but still, yeah, that's a fine line with letting him. You know, I always tell him, like, you know, that's typical. I explain to him why it's not safe online necessarily if you don't know the person. So but and then I will say, safety wise, like I'm going to tomorrow I'll be in Nashville with my brother and my daughter wants to do the typical, let's go down on Broadway and let's take the tractor that, you know, is typically a tractor full of intoxicated people. And his spatial awareness isn't necessarily there, and he looks totally typical. So my anxiety is on high alert, and I can't enjoy myself necessarily when we're in those situations, because I just see all it takes is for him to bump into somebody that's intoxicated and he looks like a big 6-foot man, you know? So yeah, that's still issues. So pressure to achieve. This is another thing that I did not realize about myself, and this is probably one of the biggest things that we get aha moments when we have conversations with adult siblings, is this we must be perfect. You know, I was the straight A student in school. Did I ever consciously think that I have to be perfect because my parents are putting out so much energy and effort with my sibling? No, never once did that thought cross my mind consciously until I was an adult and looked back and, you know, had relationships of my own, you know, that I always felt the need. It's still something I grapple with to this day, that it's okay that I'm not perfect. and I can make mistakes, and people around me are not gonna hate me because I made a mistake, or, so that's probably one of, if I was to say, the biggest impact in my life is that for me. But I think just as a child, I understood that my parents were struggling, and I could help them by not making them worry or have to intervene with me, so over identification, this is what kind of what I alluded to earlier about, I think I have what my brother has. And I will say this, with, if it is a genetic, something that definitely has a genetic or that type of link, it may not be something you want to discount. It may be something that you do want to actually look at, because maybe it's like in autism, it could be just a higher functioning type of, autism. But yeah, just, I think I have what my brother has, that the like talking through that with your child. So
Yeah. And like you said, like, girls are often under-identified for autism too, because they tend to be reared more socially. And so they are masked. So sometimes they might have a diagnosis and it might go unnoticed until in adulthood, when you realize what's going on. So it's possible.
Right. I had shared with Liza before, I read an interesting study, because boys are identified, and we all know the rate in autism is higher in boys than girls, and I read a study, like, is it really higher, or are we just not identifying girls? And the study said, if you look at one of a typical trait for a female is they're highly social, and one of the deficits with somebody with autism is a social deficit. But in females, when they have a social deficit, it just brings them to the level of a typical male, right? So it was a really interesting study, and really made me think about, like, oh, maybe we need to be looking at girls a little differently. There's also talk out there about having a completely different diagnostic tool for females and males, and but anyways, I won't go into all that, but I could talk all night. Do you want to go on to the next one, and we'll see if anybody feels comfortable, if you want to share what your concerns might be, or do you identify, now that you've heard these, do you look at your other child and like, oh, I think this might be what we have here, or what is your biggest concern that might happen?
And go ahead and put it in the chat, as Nikki mentioned, please, if you're comfortable sharing.
Liza, do you relate to any of those while people are hopefully typing here, but you relate any stories to share on your end?
Yeah, the three for me are the safety, relationships, and the future. Like, that's where I am right now in my life. I don't think I was, when I was younger, I don't think that I was embarrassed or like, I recognized when, we'd watch our brother, maybe our mom was in a doctor's appointment and he's like rolling around on the ground and we're trying to like keep him safe in the doctor's waiting room, but I didn't think that people are like, I didn't get embarrassed by that. It was just like, how do I get through this, safely? Let's see, we have somebody in the chat.
Yeah, is your daughter that is attending school, is she the child with the special needs, or the typical Sib?
That's the way I'm interpreting that the daughter with special needs she's probably in early intervention right now, and will be turning 3 and starting school.
Starting school.
Uh-huh.
Well,
That is a big transition.
Yeah, yeah. So is your concern with the transition, or is your concern that she is like, will be at the same school as her sibling? Or if you can elaborate on that a little bit. While you're doing that, we'll look at the next one.
And I'm seeing this one, it says, my younger daughter feels that she is the only one, and how come? And, you know, I think that's that we've seen as adults in our sibling community is, we go, God, we wish we had something like this when we were younger. We wish that we had a group where we could talk to and experience and have our experiences validated and everything like that, because we didn't realize it until we were adults, like that we were missing that.
Mm-hmm.
She also wants to understand why both her brothers have some behaviors that she doesn't understand.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Can I go back to your first one, Liza? So real quick, connecting her with other siblings, Sibs would be great. You know, if you have mom groups and mom groups have, you know, there's other siblings there, maybe getting them together. There's also, it's called Sibs shops. If I think we have people from all over the state here, actually. So I can give you the information on that, Leann. Clovis Unified used to host it, but the facilitators have now moved on to administration and don't do that anymore. But it's for children 8 to 12 years old, and it's like a game, fun focus. And Sibs, the Clovis area, the Sibs, I think the Down syndrome,
They are. Mm-hmm.
Do Sibs shop. There's also, because I researched for another purpose, there are some Sibs shops that are virtual in the Bay Area. So it's the Sibling Support Project that leads those. We work very, very, Sibling Leadership Network and Sibling Support Project work very close with each other. But I can give you that information, Leann, just a direct link to see where all over the United States and actually international now Sibs shops are happening. So that would be my recommendation, is even if there isn't a formal, and you don't even need to have like a formal conversation and say like, you have a brother with autism and you have a brother with autism, like you guys should get together, you know, just like let them be together, because I feel like it's something that's going to naturally happen. Right. Mm-hmm. And yeah, we did I'll share real quick. We did oh, go ahead, Leann.
Oh, no, it's okay. I just was going to say, I really appreciated too, how you were talking about what the sibling might need could depend or will depend too on the diagnosis, right? Because, you know, if you're talking about one of your children is medically fragile, that's going to look different than maybe someone who has a child with Down syndrome. And, you know, so there's all sorts of different needs. And so I love your suggestion though, of just getting them connected to, you know, other kiddos who have a sibling with a similar need. Boy, would that be, you know, impactful, just to have a peer understand what it is, even if it isn't a formal group. Yeah, thank you for that suggestion.
I just saw the one comment up here. I missed it, so my apologies. They were coming in faster for a little bit. I don't want my 14-year-old to feel stressed and feel responsible at such a young age for his older brother. Thank you. First of all, let me just say for being aware of that, because a lot of times I feel like it can be just the opposite, where it's an expectation sometimes. So thank you for not wanting to make them feel that way. They may naturally, if that's just their natural tendency, like my parents never, well, I won't say never, because there was an issue when I was in high school and I was the default babysitter because there were not many people who could babysit. But I did appreciate when I sat down and told my mom, like, you need to have respect for me. Like, I had plans tonight with my friends, even though I hadn't mentioned them to you yet. Like, I did have plans. please ask me if I'm free to babysit rather than just assume that I always will. And she respected that. So I did appreciate that. But I would just say, you know, that goes back to the communication and, you know, we as siblings can take on a lot of that responsibility without even being asked to. So I would say I would have appreciated being assured. Like when I was graduating high school, I had planned to I wanted to be an aeronautical engineer, work for NASA. I was going to go to Embry-Riddle and in Arizona. And when it came down to it, I could not leave my brother, just could not. Now, I don't regret that at all because I'm very passionate about where I'm at. But I think at that age, I might have appreciated like, hey, we know this, like, rest assured, we're still going to care for your brother. We know you guys have a close relationship. Here's what we're going to do to help maintain that, even if you're in different states, kind of. So that might be one thing that you do.
Yeah, that reassurance and checking in, you know, if you're concerned that your child is going to feel stressed about this, check in with them and see where they're at, you know, because sometimes you might also make assumptions of where they are and how they're feeling. And so allow their voice to be heard, so that encourages the communication as you get older together too, that they're allowed to voice how they feel.
And then Julie, we see yours. Hi. I would say for your question with the question is how to promote healthy relationship between the 2-year-old and the older kiddo that has behaviors that can look and be scary. Just my own personal recommendation would be find something an activity to engage them in where you're more confident that behaviors won't happen, that can be pleasurable for both children at the same time. And at least start there. And then maybe have, well, it's a 2-year-old, but I would say as the child gets older, you know, even like by the time of 4-year-old, they could probably start comprehending, like, when he acts this way, it looks really scary, right? This is why he does that, you know, kind of thing, to help them understand it so it isn't scary. Now, if it's still physical, it could be scary, and maybe you just need to give them a way to protect themselves or what to do in a situation like that. But for that, just to get them to engage together, perhaps just, you know, in some sort of activity where the behavior is less likely to happen.
So would that be to, like, you know, if the older brother has a preferred activity? So, like, say, playing with trains, right? You know,
Yeah.
or just something. Okay, that's a great suggestion. Thank you, Nikki.
Yeah, maybe just set up for them to play trains together or something.
So just trying to find situations where they can have successful time together, you know, as often as possible. Yeah, I was thinking that too. That really applies in the opposite way as well. Earlier, when the other mama asked how to encourage a good relationship, but it was the older brother, right, who was typical, and then had a younger sibling. How do you encourage that? I would think that's the same thing, right? Finding opportunities where they can find enjoyable activities together. Right. Just, yeah.
I would start small and then grow.
Yeah. Yeah. I would caution and not like forcing the typical sibling to do something that maybe they don't enjoy as much because it's what the child with the disability enjoy, you know, because then there's that whole thing like that like, well, you have to do this because he likes this. It doesn't matter if you don't. So I would just, that can go to an extreme also. So I would just caution in that. So.
Very good point. Did you see Mama Hillary commented how she always included the younger son in therapy with his older brother, and that helped.
Yeah,
that's a great suggestion.
I was that. I can vividly remember therapists coming to our house when my brother was young. So mind you, I was probably 12 at this time. And I'm thinking it was probably the speech therapist that came and just like, play with your brother. Let's all play together kind of thing. And when he went into the kitchen, he reached up to the cabinet and he used to just point at the cabinet and go, and, you know, just a grunt kind of, when he wanted a drink of something, and I would just get in. She's like, oh, here's how you can help him learn to talk. You know, he can say drink, you know, so just encourage him, or just say, you know, oh, you want a drink, you know, and teaching me how to name and stay instead of saying good job, saying good talking, you know, and things that have brought me far in my career as a special educator. So yeah, that's,
you know, something I did too was I had a special bag of toys that our youngest son got to play with only when we were at appointments. So I kept it in the car, and he only got to play with those toys while we were at therapy for the older siblings. And so it became a thing where he really looked forward, you know, to that time when it was one-on-one time together, you know, mom and me time, you know, with these special toys. And that really helped. I mean, it became this bonding experience over something that could just be, like you said, resentful and boring, you know, instead turned into something really special.
Yeah, that's great. I used to have, I've had a few like siblings in my career, and as a special ed teacher, you know, it was preschool and kindergarten. If there were older siblings, where they were so eager to learn, like, I want him to talk. How can I help him talk? How come in? And I've had a couple that would come in over summer school and just be like the classroom volunteer, and, you know, that, so I would say if they show that kind of interest, that's okay. I wouldn't force them to play that role as therapist. But if they show that interest, then I would just say, go with it, you know, not to an extreme. You still want them to be a sibling. When my brother lived with me, that was my standard line, that I'm not your mother. I am your sister. I have no desire to be your mother. You're a grown adult. You know what you should be doing. The things that I knew he was capable of doing, he was just flat out being lazy. You're a grown adult. I'm not your mother. You know what you need to do. You do it. So his innocence excelled when he lived with me.
And that's another thing that sometimes comes out as siblings become like adult level. You know, they might have different things that they see that they would like their sibling to be participating in that may differ from what the parents or guardians might be doing. My parents also didn't push my brother as much, you know.
Yep.
In fact, he used to, when he was younger, he would say, Mom, she's bothering me again, because I'd be like, you want a pizza, you order it. Like, you know, or you do this, you know, and he'd tell on me. So, you know,
I've heard siblings say, you know, even younger, that when you have chores around the house, like, how come I have chores and he doesn't? And a parent will be like, well, because he can't do it. And they're like, I've seen him do it when he wanted, like, he totally is capable of doing it, you know? So I think us as siblings, like, see the true capacity of our brother and sister sometimes. So that is a common thing that I've heard in siblings is a lot of the frustration and resentment that we can have to our parents is that they weren't held to the same expectation. But when I say expectation, it was to do the expectation of to do something that you're capable of doing. But good. All right, let's get on to the good things.
Yep. Hold on.
Thank you guys for your feedback.
Where did my mouse go? It keeps disappearing. There we go.
And we're at 9:30, so 7:30. Sorry, I'm 2 hours different. So, all right. So, opportunities. So there are some great things that come out of being a sibling. Maturity. You know, us Sibs have to mature typically at a little better rate. You know, likely because we can have increased responsibility for than most kids our age do. Our patience, everybody tells me I have the patience of a saint, you know, but just because I don't know, I just see the world through a different lens, you know. It was all
you worked on it throughout your life with
yeah. Yep, it was my brother was tantruming and aggressive and young from a young age for me. So and you know, and we've had to make sacrifices that you know, a lot of that may not be there in a typical family and sibling relationship. So tolerance, I love this one. It's just we understand that there are lots of different ways to be in this world. You know, it's not just your mainstream typical what everybody looks like. I hope that I will say, if there's one thing with this higher prevalence of autism, that this kind of neurodiversity movement, that it's affecting the disability community as a whole, that people are starting to be like, wait, let's look past this and understand that there are people here. So inspiration, you know, of looking at your, you know, maybe the sibling has had multiple medical procedures or something, or they just struggled to learn to walk, you know. It can help really put some things in perspective for us, you know. I can say, maybe not as an inspiration, but more of my perspective of the world is I think I tend to appreciate tiny things, because when you have a child with a disability, as you guys know, it's the tiny celebrations. You're not going to get this maybe big jump, but just the tiniest thing you're celebrating. So that is my lens of the world almost at this point. So that is, I think that's an awesome lens, you know. Sense of humor. How many times have Liza and I sit here and laughed about things, right? So humor can be a coping mechanism, right? It's I hope that we can be at that point. So appreciation for things others may take for granted, you know, appreciation just for basic health. How many, say 10, 12-year-olds, 14-year-olds are appreciate health if they haven't been around somebody that has had a health issue, right? And family. I can say, and I always preface this statement with, my parents are well aware of these conversations and how I put my family, what my family has been through out here, and they support what I do. They think it's important. But my parents, when my brother were born, were literally on the verge of divorce, and it was not a nice situation. And thankfully, my family was one that, you know, came together to to work as a team to support my brother, and just the needs, not only to support my brother, but because of my brother, my family had to come together and communicate better and collaborate and better together. So I did, I think, end up having a better appreciation for family and what it really means. So here's Liza and I, number 6, helping professions. There are many special educators that are siblings. It's I taught graduate courses in the credential program at Fresno Pacific. Well, I still do actually, but just virtually now. And that's one of my first opening nights with a new class of people working on getting their special ed credential is, how many of you are siblings, right? There's always 1 or 2 in a class of 12. So they do, you'll see. So my daughter's going into social work, right? She was raised around Special Olympics, and she didn't even know what a disability was. I had to sit her down at 8 years old and explain why she couldn't participate in Special Olympics. But it's not uncommon to see siblings in helping professions. So pride and optimism, that again, that lens, the just kind of how we see life, not we look at abilities and not disabilities. Advocacy, this is one thing. I'm going to move around while I talk here because my low battery light just came on my laptop. So so this is another thing that Liza and I are, this is what we're doing right now. Yeah, I consider this advocacy. We are strong, not only advocates for ourselves as siblings, but we are strong advocates for our sibling and for people with disabilities as a whole. So one of our board members sits on the State Council for Developmental Disabilities. And through the Sibling Leadership Network, like I said, we have a whole advocacy branch of our national organization that goes to DC and does lobbying and really pushed at getting siblings included in the Family Medical Leave Act. So if my brother lived with me and had a medical something, you know, that my job was still secure, just like if it was my own child. So loyalty, excuse me real quick. This I think is a typical sibling dynamic, but where you may argue at home, like you may see that they beat each other up at home, but they're extremely loyal outside of home. I think this can be typical of any sibling relationship. So yeah. How about if anybody wants to look at sharing, and maybe Liza, you can share what people are typing in the chat if you want to. What opportunities do you see? What are some of the cool things that, so you, the couple siblings we have on here, what's some benefits you see as being a sibling, or parents, you know, do you look at your typical sibling and see any of these?
My dogs are going bonkers, so I'm going to.
Okay.
Welcome to Zoom.
Right.
Leann.
No, I love it. I'm debating on whether we're going to count Nikki's battery and Liza's dog as technical glitches number 6 and 7. Okay. But yeah, I loved the comment about compassion, because I agree. I think any child who grows up around a loved one with a disability, right, they are just typically ingrained with compassion and just a loving view of the world, realizing that not everybody just fits in that box, right? And we've got to expand our box. So I love that.
Yeah,
Let's see.
I look at the, oh, sorry, is there a chat?
Yep.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Liza.
But go ahead, Liza.
I was thinking about the health thing. Like, so my brother with autism, my oldest sister had mental health conditions. My mom had lupus, so chronic pain, and and a lot of these things are things that people can't see and aren't aware of. And so I think having these experiences always just makes you realize somebody else might be going through something that we have no idea about.
Mhm.
Family might, they might have just come through a really tough situation and a meltdown, and we're seeing the tail end of that. And so I think, like you were saying, just really having awareness of other people and compassion and empathy for them.
Right. Amen. And
All right.
yeah, do you see that Julie had a couple questions?
So do you think siblings going to Helping Vocations because of the investment they have in their sibling with the disability? That's a great question, Julie. I think me personally, I just realized that because of my upbringing that it just came naturally to me. So it was easy. But I also, because of my brother and I want a better life for him. Now, whether it's really going to be, I don't know, that would impact him, but there are so many out there like him that I'm just not okay with how they are dealt with in society right now, which has spawned my just me continuing in my career and in my education. I just want a bigger impact and when I went from a teacher to an administrator, because I wanted to make a bigger impact. And I think a lot of times the family voices aren't necessarily as heard in education. And I feel like as a family member and an educator, I can help facilitate those conversations. So, so I don't know that there was a conscious thing, but that's a great question, because you're really making me think about it now, Julie, if maybe it is something. But
when you think about it too, I mean, as we're growing up, we're having reinforcing experiences with our siblings when we recognize that we've done a good job helping them communicate or something like that. And so that builds self-esteem in ourselves, in us, and confidence in, I've got this, I know how to do this. And so I think that becomes powerful too, because like you said, you realize that this is something that you are good at, and this is something, and so then your passion becomes, okay, this is something that I'm good at, I need to do something with it. So I can see that connecting.
Yeah. Maturity happening. Have you seen early maturity happen with younger siblings? I haven't like personally been involved in a family that close with that, but from what the research says and what I've heard other people talk about, absolutely yes. Just because their everyday life is not what a typical child would go through necessarily, right? So that early maturity can happen, but that's when it's like a fine balance between like maturity, and this is a really good trait that you're getting, that it's becoming too much and it's like a parentification, where then maybe it's to a detriment. So that's a fine line. So
this next one here, you were talking about this the other night, Nikki. 2 parents opted to adopt a child. Oh wait, maybe I misheard that, from their adult children. Let's see here, maybe I misread that. I was thinking it was about how some parents have decided to take another child to help be a care provider too. Opted to adopt a child with special needs later in life.
Yeah, that's something, because I've had friends that have adopted, well, friends' parents, so that have adopted children with special needs, And I've heard it from adults that like, they didn't consult me in this because when they go at 70, right, when that this is now going to be on me, because as an adult you recognize that more than you would as a kid, and you grow up with it like, wait a minute, what's your plan kind of thing. So
okay, shall we
it
move?
gave me an opportunity to come together. Yeah.
Do you want me to move on to the next slide, Nikki? I think those are,
Yeah.
okay.
And here we go. This is the one I was talking to that I just say that I love. So this is elaborated. There's a handout that Leann will be sending you, and it's the siblings needs across the life course. This is a very condensed version of that handout. So go ahead, Liza.
Yeah, and a lot of this might depend on the age and the developmental level. Different things that can come into factor too are like the age gap. So like we're 10 years apart, so you might see variations in this lifespan here. Distance from siblings. So at the adult level, it might look very different if they live in the same town or if they live in a different city. Gender differences. So when we look at all these things, these are the different lenses that you're looking at. So gender, a lot of times, like Nikki mentioned earlier on, it's females that tend to be the ones that become care providers, that responsibility is often handed to them. And then the number of siblings, so different shared responsibility. So you may or may not see these more significantly based on a lot of these different factors. But like at the elementary school age, we mentioned earlier that your typical child might feel embarrassed about differences and might be upset that sibling gets away with things. And so it's always looking at what are you seeing, and then what are the different things that you could be doing? What might they need? What are the things to look out for? And so if a child is feeling embarrassed, sometimes offering a script to use with their peers for addressing the bullies and how to tackle those difficult conversations, and how to maybe even advocate if that was something either for themselves or for their sibling, or explaining the difference of rules between the two and why that might be. I'm in the adulthood part, so that part just hits heavy. The questions about the future planning, and so that might look on guidance on how to navigate the system, which are some of the things that Nikki and I are working on with that kit. And then concern about just being me, and recognizing those different feelings. We had a group the other day, and as all one of the siblings presented a challenge that she was, I'm going to this event and my brother and I don't know how to handle this, and we all went into like healing or like caretaker mode, and these are ideas that you can do to help make sure your brother is successful. And then one of us stepped back and was like, hey, it's your wedding, it's your day, let other people manage the situation with your brother and make sure that that's taken care of and he's able to participate in a way that works. And so like even as adults, we found ourselves having to go to the what they need section of our brains because we went into autopilot mode of caretaking. So yeah, this is problem solvers. Yeah.
Problem solvers.
Everybody was like, oh, and have you tried this? Have you thought about this? We're looking at her face and it's just kind of like, this isn't what I need, but it's where we went to. And it took one of us to kind of step back and go, what she needs is to be recognized as an independent person that has the right to have her own moment in this event, and that's okay. And sometimes we need other people. Sometimes your kids might need you to say that it's okay for you to not be the caretaker. Like you said, Nikki, about the babysitting, like check in and ask, like, it's okay. We need to hear that from our parents and the guardians, and to recognize our feelings are valid. So
can I make a comment on the back, like at the preschool? And I would say this goes into elementary and teen as well. I'll share the thing when we say quality alone time with parents. I've talked to parents before, and a lot of time they're just like, I don't know when, like how, like I'm overwhelmed, like I'm in survival mode here. My mom only did it one day a year for us. you know, every child's different in how much they need and so forth. But she took, and there was 3 of us. So one day a year before school started, she just took me for the day over to Monterey, and we went clothes shopping at the outlets in Monterey and had lunch and went to the beach and stuff. And it was literally one day a year that I knew was devoted just to me. So when we say quality time, don't automatically think that it has to be like regularly scheduled. You know, it could be a 15-minute for a younger child, like 15 minutes sitting and reading a book together or something, you know. I think just to have that feeling that my parents value me as well, and me as an individual person, not me in what I can do to help them with my sibling, right? So yeah, that's that quality alone time. So
Yeah, and just maybe even having a conversation about like, what was your day like? It could be easy to just get caught up into the function of the family and keeping things going, especially if you have more significant support needs in the home, you know, but to take those few moments to say like, I see you, and I want to know about you as a person, not just you as the sibling.
yeah.
So let's see here. We have a couple of minutes, so we go to the next one. But there's that concept of like intersectionality and the different parts that like make us up, right? So there's no such thing as a single issue struggle because we do not live single issue lives. And so the diversity of family dynamics can really just vary. And these are some of the pieces to look at. And so for like information, so access to information, if your family has access to information or if you don't have access to information, that can affect whether or not you're going to have the resources that are available for either your child with a disability or your other children or yourself as a parent to get through some of the things that you're going to be going through in life. For opportunities, for some, those opportunities may be easier to come by, and for some, those opportunities may be harder. So how does that impact the life of the individuals in this family? For communication, that could be positive or that could be negative. Like, what is the communication style of your family? That could either build connection, you know, or sometimes communication challenges in families might push people apart. So how does that play out? Perception, not only of how the community how you might feel the community perceives you, maybe if you're in the grocery store and something is happening, or but it also might be other extended family members or family members in your nuclear family, and how you feel based on your role in the family. And then for reassurance, so do you have a sense of community? If you have a sense of community, that can be really empowering. You might feel more able to like take on challenges, to advocate in ways that you need to. But if you don't, you might feel isolated and alone. Time, what does that availability look like? So do the parents, guardians, are you working full-time, alternating schedules? Is it a single family home? Are you needing to go to appointments? What are all the different priorities that are coming into play that affect time and how that affects the individuals in the home? So now consider this sibling that we've been talking about that's in that home. How might they be affected by each of these themes? How do each of these points touch their lives? And then what is your role, whether that be a parent, a guardian, a professional, a sibling? What is your role in providing support throughout this? And we really thank you for being here tonight, for recognizing this as an important conversation to have. And we hope that this is, you know, helped your family a little bit tonight. Did you want to say something, Nikki?
I was just say we've got a couple more slides for you guys here, which is more information on so Liza and I are in California Sibs. We're spread out all over California. Liza and I are in the Central Valley area. We're the two contacts here. But we do so there's information here about connecting with us. You can go to our website, and then the national sibling siblingleadership.org is the national sibling leadership. And then the sibling support project is the one I was talking about that does the Sibs shops. And Leann, I'll get that to you. There are, for the siblings out there, if you're not connected on SibNet, that is, I don't know, there's probably close to 1,000 siblings on SibNet now. So it's for adults. There's a Sib teen and a Sib 20. I will say that I have been told that the Sib teen Facebook page is moderated, that there are people that watch that to make sure that it is appropriate content on there. So, and then they have the grandparents also. So, and then we have one of the cool things of COVID, we used to have in-person meetups, and they were separated. Northern California would have one, Central Valley would have one, and Southern California would have one. But now, thanks to COVID, we do them virtually, and we'll probably continue doing them virtually and in person sometimes also. But we have regular, what are we, twice a month, Liza? Usually on a Thursday.
A Thursday and a Saturday morning.
Yeah, we do virtual.
Well, once a month.
Once a month, okay. And we alternate between Thursday night, Saturday morning, to give people more availability to go. These are only for siblings, and sometimes they're just a general conversation. Sometimes we have a speaker around a topic, and I'll let Liza, you're facilitating the one coming up, right?
Yeah, so for the next one in December, we have a guest speaker, Carol Blessing, and she's out of Cornell, and she is a part of citizen-centered leadership, and it's really looking at how individuals with disabilities are included in society, in ways that we can work as a community to make sure that inclusion happens. And so I've asked her to kind of talk about the relationship between disability and citizenship as it plays out in the lives of us and our siblings, the things that I might have access to versus my brother might, and the things that we might have to fight for to get some of those, like he just got an apartment. It was really hard to get somebody that had no credit history, and has never lived anywhere, a place to live. And so but he's entitled to participating in this world. And what does that look like? And how do we do that better? And who are we as citizens alongside our siblings? So how do we remove those barriers? So she's going to be our guest speaker for our siblings that day. And I'm excited to have her. And
I know a couple people had to leave, but if the siblings are still on here, please reach out. You can get connected. We can get you, if you just go to the website, you can fill out an information form there. If you go to this meetup.com, you'll start getting notified of whenever we have them scheduled. So, and then Liza, if you want to stop sharing, maybe we've got, oh no, it is straight up right on time. But if anybody has questions, I don't mind hanging out for a minute, but. Good to see you too, Julie. I hope you're doing well.
Thanks everybody for being here tonight.
We appreciate you all. You validate us as siblings, that we as siblings are important enough for somebody to come and take an interest in, right?
Yeah.
So,
go ahead.
Our goal is to help other siblings. Go ahead, Leann, sorry.
Oh, I just was going to thank you both and Rebecca for being here. I just posted the link to the survey in the chat box, but I know people are logging off. So if they don't get it, they will receive it in the morning in their email as well. But thank you, Nikki and Liza. I so appreciate your experience. I appreciate too that you are adults, and it gives, parents a glimpse into how, what their child might feel like in the future. And so that's really cool to see two siblings who are so invested in their brothers' lives. I love that. So as a mom.
Well, and I think a lot of parents, if you're young and you're just like overwhelmed and you're struggling yourself, and then you're like, shoot, now I'm concerned about this other child. Like,
right.
You turned out okay.
Right. Look at you. You guys are amazing.
I think every sibling I know, every sib that I know has been through therapy, but really we're all good overall. Like, yeah. I wouldn't change it for the world. So much of my identity is based upon how I grew up with my brother, and I'm just such a, I don't know, I think my compassion and my understanding, like people with disabilities need siblings, right? We are their advocates.
Right. I think you're right. I think that's the entire lifespan, in the sense of, I had a mama that called me today that had concerns because the daughter, who is typical, had shared with her some concerns about her little brother who has a disability, and that maybe he wasn't getting enough help in class that he needed, and I was like, I love that.
Yep.
Like, sister is like, Mom, we need to look into this. Like,
yep. There's a future advocate for people with disabilities there,
Absolutely. So. I loved it. So, and thank you, Rebecca, for translating.
Thank you.
So, yeah, mucho gracias. Ooh, look at me go. So
Leann typed an email to me the other day in Spanish, thanks to Google Translate. So,
you ratted me out. I was totally gonna claim that I knew how to type in Spanish. So, but well, thank you, everyone, and we will say good night. Nikki, I know it's late there, so get some rest. So,
good night, everyone. Thank you for coming.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, Brooke. I see you are here. You're still there. We'll be in touch.
All right, everyone. Good night.